Hi, I am back again with another book review, and today we are going to be talking about Managing Expectations by Minnie Driver, so stay tuned. Hey, it's me, I'm back again with another book review. Haven't done one of these in a while. I'm kind of excited. This is a book I've been looking forward to for a while. Managing Expectations by Minnie Driver. It came out on Friday, and I was lucky enough to pick one up in Denver International Airport on a flight to New York. And when I talk about book reviews, I always like to start off with why I bought this particular book, and this particular book actually is a little more meaningful than most. So Minnie Driver was in the same class as my brother at school. They went to the same school. I went to that school as well, actually, briefly. And so I was delighted to read this book. I don't know Minnie Driver personally. When I was like 2 or 3 years old, I think I hung out in the same room as her when she came over for a birthday party or something like that. And I've like interacted with her twice on social media, but I have no relationship with Minnie Driver. But when my brother passed away, she wrote the sweetest, kindest letters to my parents that was really, really meaningful. And so it's very apparent to me that she's a lovely person. And I was also very, very good friends with her brother at school, and I remember remembering just how kind her mother was as well. And her mother passed away recently, but I remember I had quite a difficult time at that school, and out of all of the adults I interacted with, her mother especially was somebody I have memories of remembering being very kind. Yeah, so I grabbed this book and eagerly jumped into it. And there are a few things I want to talk about this book. Normally when I do book reviews, I'm very, very strict about only doing book reviews about things I'm like overwhelmingly positive about, because I like to be a positive person. And there is like an elephant in the room I want to discuss with this book, which we'll get to. But first of all, let's talk about this as a book. So what is it? It's described as a memoir in essays, and to me, it reads kind of like a biography. It's a wonderful biography in which we have like little snapshots of Minnie Driver's life. And it starts off, it completely immersed me right from the very beginning, because it starts off with her experiences going to this school that I'm so familiar with when she was 9 years old, and her family situation and everything around that, which I found absolutely fascinating. Because I don't know Minnie Driver, but I know of Minnie Driver through things people have told me about Minnie Driver. And I remember growing up, they're like, oh, Minnie Driver, she's quite troublesome. Which is really interesting, because when you read this book, you see it from her perspective. And I found it very humbling and very emotional to read. So that beginning section, it was very weird to read about a place I was so familiar with and people I was familiar with. And in particular, there was a school play that my brother performed in that was like one of the most pivotal experiences of his life, I know, and clearly meant a lot to her. So that was an incredible way to kick things off. And Minnie Driver's style of writing is she's got brevity down to like an art, and it is fast-paced and punchy and immersive. And I was sitting there in the airport, and I was just whizzing through. Well, actually, I was sitting there on the plane, whizzing through this book, completely immersed. It was like the entire world disappeared. And then she goes on about this experience of being sent to the Fontainebleau in Miami, where she spent a night before going back to England. Of course, us James Bond fans, we're very familiar with that place because of its pivotal scene in Goldfinger. And of course, Minnie Driver herself was in a Bond film in GoldenEye. And reading these different segments of her life are incredible, because you get to see her perspective on a life which I think none of us really got exposure to. I think when you're famous, everyone projects what they think of you onto their interpretation of you. And it's so interesting to actually see it from the other perspective and actually see Minnie Driver as a human being. And especially, she wrote a large segment about her hair, and she's got the most amazing hair. And like, for me, like, if I don't trim my hair, I have this huge bush and it's bright orange and stuff. So that resonated with me. I really sympathised with that. And then as she gets older, her experiences, you know, going to raves and becoming an actress, and then her relationships. It's amazing to get these little snapshots leading up to an absolute heartbreaking end of the book, which she wrote while her mother, who I have memories of, passed away. And yeah, by that point, reading this, I had tears streaming down my face. So it's a really wonderful series of little snapshots into her life, and I found them very moving and very immersive. And she's a wonderful, wonderful writer. And that brings us on to perhaps the elephant in the room about this book, which is I purchased this book for $30, and I was on a flight from Denver to New York City, and I read the entire thing within an hour and a half. I remember I got to the end and I had tears streaming down my cheeks, and I was like, oh, that's it. And it was. And it was quite odd, because, you know, I'm a fast reader. I'm not superhumanly fast. And, you know, I've easily read a book in a day. I would expect maybe I could finish this on the entire 4-hour flight, but it's like I hadn't expected to read the entire thing within an hour and a half. And I think that's what leads on to something maybe people aren't going to discuss about reviews. Minnie Driver, in her acknowledgements at the back, goes on about, you know, she was midway through writing this when her mother passed away, and there was pressure to get the book done on time, and she's got a wonderful way of describing it. You know, her partner and her son were saying, like, maybe you could just make the letters bigger. And I kind of felt to a certain extent that's what happened. I don't think it's a reflection on Minnie Driver at all. I think her writing is brilliant, and the little acknowledgement in the back kind of made me concoct a theory in my head that probably has no relevance to reality or whatever, that she was going through one of the hardest things in her life, losing her mother, and there was still the pressure from Harper One to get the book finished. And Minnie Driver is the sort of person who achieves things. She meets people's expectations and exceeds them. But I think in this circumstance, I don't think Harper One should have maintained that pressure, because what we got here was an incredible book that wasn't, I think I would have been really, really happy if it had had maybe 30% extra in terms of contents. I mean, you know, for me as a Bond fan, wouldn't it be amazing if she just wrote a little bit about being in a Bond movie? Or there is one of the lines where I made my jaw drop, is where she mentions Harvey Weinstein. And of course, Minnie Driver, one of the films she's most famous for is Good Will Hunting, which Matt Damon and Ben Affleck and Harvey Weinstein was involved in that. And it's like there are, I think, 3 specific mentions of him in this book. But right now, I was like, I want to know more, because so many stories came about there. She was right in the center of that. That's something that you'd want to know more about. Even recently, she did a movie called Cinderella with Pierce Brosnan, which I know some people criticised. I really enjoyed personally. That was great. I would love to hear about that. It's weird. The book kind of goes from like the Good Will Hunting days to being in her late 30s, and there are so many sections that you don't read anything about because the content's not there. And I think on Harper One's side, I really think they should have had some empathy for her as a human being and said, you know what, we should push back publication of this book 6 months and let you produce more content, because what you end up having is this book here that is absolutely beautiful. And I picked it up just looking at it, impressed with the quality of the printing and everything like that. But it took me an hour and a half to read. It's, you know, 275 pages. It's quite a large space here. I don't know. It's a very short book. And there's nothing wrong with short books, but to pay $30 for a book that you read an hour and a half, it's like, okay. I think Harper One did Minnie Driver a great disservice by not actually giving this book the breathing room that it needed. And I feel really awkward saying that, because, you know, I came into this wanting to be like absolute gung-ho fan and supporter of this book, and I loved what I read of it. However, at the end of it, I ended up feeling a little shortchanged, and I think that's something really unfair that Harper One put on Minnie Driver, because she's going through one of the hardest things in her life. I think with the timing of the book and stuff like that, they gave her 50% of the resources needed to make this book what it should be. And Minnie Driver, being who she is, managed to produce 80% out of that, because she's an incredibly high achieving person. But I think she deserved to have a little more breathing room with this book. So hopefully it is not the last thing that we read from her. And, you know, closing this out, that's actually what I want to say. I loved her style of writing. It was amazing. It's like if you've heard of Hemingway's iceberg method, where, you know, you just show readers the tip of the iceberg and they can infer the rest. She was brilliant like that. You know, that everything she writes is short and punchy, and you kind of fill in the blanks. And one of the reasons perhaps that it took me only an hour and a half to read the entire book is because it just sweeps through it. But I don't ever feel like through what she writes about that she cut anything out. It reads almost like a first draft, which is not a criticism in any way, shape or form. I just did the Bond book club with The Man with the Golden Gun, which of course Ian Fleming passed away before that book actually got published, so about 2/3 of it is a first draft. And the ironic thing is, the first draft reads incredibly fluidly, and it's almost like better than the second draft because it's cut right down to the bone. And these stories, these essays in here are exactly like that. They are like very trimmed, but absolutely more immersive because of that. Like, I think her writing style here is brilliant. And after reading this, I sat there and I was like, I would read the hell out of a novel she wrote. If she decided to write a novel about, I don't know, a British actress who moved to Hollywood and found out her boyfriend was cheating on her, and then there was a wildfire and she met this Indiana Jones type character and they swam across the bay and maybe there was like a murder or a conspiracy or something a little bit untoward, I would read the heck out of that. And one of the things she says in this book is, you know, that a lot of the female parts that she did auditions for were kind of like underwritten. And like, I don't know, I don't think Minnie Driver's ever going to watch this, but if you ever decide to write a novel like that, then do so, because I think you would write a novel with a really, really, really powerful female character in it who came across as like vividly authentic, and then hopefully they would make a movie out of it, and you can correct some of the things I think you very rightly identify that are wrong with modern movies and modern screenwriting. So yeah, I really hope this is not the last book that Minnie Driver writes. And I also really, really hope that one day the message gets back to Harper One that you need to start doing your job. Because I have made no secret of the fact that I have absolute scorn and contempt for traditional publishing. And to be honest, what they shortchanged the reader, and they shortchanged Minnie Driver with the fact that this book is so brief. I kind of feel like I picked this book up, paid $30, and a bit of a bait and switch. So hopefully somebody at Harper One gets slapped on the wrist for that, and they're like, you know what? Minnie Driver deserves better. Minnie Driver's fans deserve better, and the readers of this book deserve better. They deserve more. So there we go. I feel really awkward making that criticism, because I would love to just sit here and be like, oh my god, it's the most amazing book ever, and what of it exists is the most brilliant book. Wonderful. Love it. Absolutely. The first thing I'm going to do on Monday is mail this to my parents, who would absolutely adore to read it. But it's very, very brief, and I think it's only fair to point that out, because I deliberately have not read any other people's reviews of this book yet, but I wonder if anyone else picked up on that. Because for me, not an issue. I paid $30 for this book. I'd quite happily paid $60 for this book, because what it's about and the person who wrote it is meaningful to me. However, if I was a more casual person, I would probably feel a little shortchanged from that. It is beautiful though. Just the authenticity and the vulnerability she brings to it is really, really great. And I love this book because one of the things she points out about being famous is, you know, how people come. She has this beautiful section where she says like how unimaginative it is for the paparazzi and newspaper columnists to write the truth about her, as in, you know, her relationships don't last, or she's too tall, or she's troublesome, or whatever. But to have spent the last 20 years only knowing Minnie Driver through the lens of external viewpoints of her, to see that from the other side is really, really powerful. So yeah, I applaud this book, and I'm very, very happy I read it. I think it's beautifully written, and you know, Minnie Driver still has a very, very successful career as an actress, but hopefully she will also have a very, very successful career as a writer, because it is something that she clearly has incredible aptitude for. Anyway, that's my very brief review. Managing Expectations, out now, definitely worth an hour and a half of your time, and I will come back with another book review very soon. Thank you very much. I'm Roland Hume. I've sold 67,000 copies of my books. If you want to find out how I did it, I've got a link right here you can click, and otherwise don't forget to subscribe. I've got more videos coming soon. Thank you.